Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Two Rivers Tuesday. I'm Maggie here with John Teague.
What's up, Maggie?
Nothing. Just sitting here.
Yeah.
We're in your office today.
We are. We're in my office. It's kind of it's a darker kind of morning when we're recording.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's cozy in here.
It's kind of vibey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Moody.
Yeah. Jesse knows how to set the lighting and all those things.
He
we
does.
just sit here.
Yes. So we're back on video. So if you like to watch this on video, watch it on video.
Yeah.
We have it this week. All right, John, tell me your favorite musical of all time.
Oh my gosh. My favorite musical. I love Wicked. It's probably evidenced by the many times I reference it in sermons. I've seen it live, like on Broadway. Somehow I just have had the privilege of seeing it 3 different times. Once with my family, once with just Katie when we went to New York probably 12 years ago for our 10th anniversary. We saw it. And then once with about 100 other 100 high school students and leaders on a mission trip to New York. We took over that theater
That's
balcony awesome. And it was pretty epic. So I love Wicked. I also really enjoyed Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
The first act more than the second act, but that's getting a little into the weeds. I thought that was really great, and I wish I never saw that one live. Only seen that one, like streaming it. But what about you? You don't really even like musicals.
I was not a musical fan until I watched Wicked, the movie.
Okay.
And
movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does that count?
I mean, it does. It is.
Okay.
It's a musical. They sing.
Yeah.
Yes, there's music.
But yes, typically pre-Wicked, anytime music begins, my eyes are rolling.
You're like, no.
I'm like, oh no, they're about to ruin this movie. But I have been growing in my appreciation for such art.
Yes.
And
Such art.
But I really liked Wicked.
Yeah. It's great. I really enjoyed it. The music's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
It's genius. We've
Yes.
talked about this before.
What is the difference in like seeing it live as a play versus the movie?
Well, there's just maybe like one of the things is you just get this appreciation for the incredible talent.
Okay.
There's no like, cut, let's do that again.
Mm-hmm.
There's no like, we'll fix that pitchy problem in post.
Yes.
It's just like
Raw
they're
talent.
right there on the stage, and like you're in the same room with them, and you're just in awe of the incredible talent. The orchestra, they're playing it all live. There's no tracks.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
They're singing and dancing and acting.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah.
it's impressive.
I see
And I
it.
think that's part of it. And you're just sort of caught up in it. It reminds me of a song from Hamilton where somebody sings they want to be in the room where it happens. Like they want to be in the room.
Yes.
And like, I just think there's something about being in the room, which, by the way, that's a great commercial for like why it's so important to be with us when we gather on Sundays to worship. Could you watch it online? Yes. And is that a gift when you're out of town? Sure. Or when you're sick? Yes. But, I just think with all that we have access to today, we can listen to just so much good worship music and so much good teaching. We can podcast it and stream it and all those kinds of things. But there's something about being in the room that you cannot replace.
Yes. Yeah, that's so true. All right. Well, we will tie the musicals piece into the sermon in just a moment. But
Okay.
before we go there, I want to highlight 2 things. Bros and Barbecue. Remind our men why they should go.
Bros and Barbecue. It's going to be great. Just chance to get together. I think it's a good chance to invite friends that this is kind of like an easy thing to invite them to. Hey, you want to come eat some barbecue, hang out. We'll laugh a little bit. We'll give away a few things. And we're going to hear sort of a story of life change. One of our men's going to share a little bit of how God has really worked in his life and transformed his life. And then we're going to talk a little bit about something we've got coming up starting in March for the men. Yeah.
So exciting. Yeah, I just found out last night who that man is that we're going to hear. Y'all are going to hear the story from. And I'm so excited that everybody will get to hear his stories. That's going to be great.
Great teaser.
Yes. All right. And then we have core class coming up. So tell everybody why they should take core class.
Why should I tell them how to take core class? You're the one who kind of facilitates core class. I would say that, and you could probably do this better than I, but core class is how you where you can learn more about how to engage in ministry, the ministry of the gospel. This is not just for staff. This is not just for like people that are in leadership. This is for all of us to learn how has God wired us uniquely, and how has he now gifted us with his Spirit to be ministers to one another and to the world around us. That's core class.
Well done. Yeah, great job. Yeah, I think core class, we just want to help people grow in their confidence in ministering to people, just like you said. So would love to have you part of that class. You can register through our app that starts February 23rd. Anything else to highlight?
Only that small, tall ball, we highlighted that on Sunday, but that was pretty awesome. Over 400 people came.
That's a lot of people.
And that was a lot of people, a lot of families, a lot of kids running around, having a big time, dancing, getting up on stage with Tim and Caleb. Jesse was the ultimate DJ and looked the part. I heard that from multiple people. Like, Jesse looked the part. We had, some people dress up in mascots and dance around, and it was just a lot of fun getting to and I got to, this was kind of a cool thing, like I just got to stand at the door as people were leaving, so I got to see the look on their faces as they were leaving, and they had a big time, and so many of them were thanking those of us who were standing there as we were walking out. But what I loved was that the principal, Bethany Reynolds, was standing there with us, and people were thanking her. And I loved that. I just think, they should thank her. She was the one who said, yes, let's do this. And then she let us throw the party so they didn't have to do anything, but let us do it. And so we got to be a blessing to the school.
Yes.
That was huge. Love that.
I saw a picture of Jake and Jesse in their mascot uniforms, but without the heads on.
Yes.
But just the amount of sweat that is just like, they just are both drenched. And it's just a picture of how they had so much fun. You need to put that up so people can see it.
I need to see that picture. I told Katie, I was like, I don't think the worst part would be being hot and sweaty in that costume. I think the worst part would be just the residue of everyone else before you having been hot and sweaty in that costume.
Yes. Luckily for Jake, it's his own sweat from last year, hopefully. Okay. I mean, how many times does that thing get worn?
Probably hasn't been worn since
getting
last year
back in my year-old sweat. All right, let's transition to the sermon. Why did I ask you about musicals? How is this related to songs and soundtracks and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I talked about silent disco and about all of us kind of listening to, one of a couple of different tracks that we can switch back and forth in between. This idea of listening to the soundtrack of The Kingdom of Abundance and Mercy, or we can listen to the soundtrack of The Empire of Scarcity and Merit. And I just think we have to constantly be switching that soundtrack of scarcity off in our minds and going back to the kingdom of abundance and mercy, because that's where we now live as children of God.
Yes, yeah. And we're kind of pulling this out of the Lord's Prayer in the line that says, give us this day our daily bread. Because as we've talked about throughout this whole series, this prayer is a pattern for praying, but it's more than that. It is a vision for our life. And praying this prayer and letting this prayer kind of form our prayers forms us into a certain type of people. Yes. And so this idea is connected because when we pray, give us this day our daily bread, we are trusting God to be enough. We're trusting him to provide, and trusting that in his kingdom and in relationship with him, there is enough because he is enough. And so that's how it's connected to the Lord's Prayer. And so let's talk a little bit more about what it looks like living in abundance versus scarcity. So we can just kind of take a couple categories one by one and paint a picture of what it looks like to view that through listening to the song of abundance versus scarcity. So let's talk about friendship. So talk a little bit about what friendship might look like through the lens of abundance versus scarcity.
Well, I think that one way we listen to the soundtrack of scarcity is just thinking like I don't have enough, I don't have enough friends, or I don't have enough time for people in my life. I mean, I think you just say, I don't have enough. And then like, you can fill in the blank with whatever it is that creates a sense of panic or fear or exhaustion or insecurity, all these things that are not of the Lord. That's what the soundtrack of scarcity does to us. And so I'm not fully answering your question, but I think that when it comes to our friendship, we can be afraid that that we don't have enough time to invite another person into our lives. Okay, there's an example. I said that on Sunday. Another example might be like, I'm afraid that if I confront my friend about this thing that they said, or this thing in their life, that like they may not like me anymore, and I will lose them or something like that. That's scarcity mindset as opposed to an abundance mindset that says God will provide for that conversation if that's what needs to take place, and he'll provide you with what you need to have that conversation, and we can trust him to provide with what happens after that conversation. Yeah.
I think another one that I would add to that is the empire of scarcity would have us believe that the friendships we have been given are somehow like ours to possess, and so that can lead to like jealousy and territorialness, like competitiveness of like, no, I don't want anyone else to like steal this friend of mine, or I feel threatened if like you're hanging out with my friend, like what if y'all become closer friends? Not trusting like, hey, that friend was a gift to begin with, and I can like celebrate them growing in friendship with other people. I don't have to fear or be territorial or like get into that like striving, stress, all of that scarcity stuff, because I can just trust like, okay, like that friend is a gift, and I don't have to like fear loss of that friendship. I can just trust that God will provide, and that like he is enough regardless of what happens in my friendships.
I think that's good.
Another one is community. So you talked about kind of how we in Acts see a picture of a community that is living in abundance. Talk a little bit about how we see that.
I actually didn't mention that in the sermon, but I was talking about this before we started recording, that there's a picture of what it looks like to live in the kingdom of abundance as God's people, and in particular as a church. It's in Acts 2:42 through 47. I want to read this because I think it's beautiful. This is, and I think when you hear these words, this description of the beginning of the church in Acts, I hope it stirs something in you that makes you long for that. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers, and awe came upon every soul. And many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together, and they had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love, a couple things stick out to me about that, but I love that like this picture of a community that is all living in the kingdom of abundance. The like end result of that is people will be added day by day. And I've just been thinking about like how compelling it is and will be as we as a church family hopefully are like living more and more in this mindset and listening to this soundtrack of kingdom of abundance. Like our lives are going to look so much more compelling. Back to the silent disco metaphor, like if you just imagine like, okay, the people listening to the scarcity song, maybe their like headphones are red, and they're like at the party, they're in this room and they're like not having a good time. They're like copying each other. They look nervous and anxious and like insecure. And then the picture the group of people that's listening to the soundtrack of the kingdom of abundance, like they're so free, they're dancing, it's just flowing so beautifully. Like everyone that sees that wants to switch to that song. And people, the like the number gets added to that crew
Yes.
day by day.
Yes.
And so just thinking about us as a church family, like imagine our lives of just like freedom and joy and peace that will flow from like listening to the kingdom of abundance, and how much everyone around us will want to get in on that. And I think that's how we make an impact through this.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love how they were all trusting in so much in the abundance of the kingdom that they were willing to share.
Yes.
It was just like they all like there were just, no one was in need, and I see this in our church. I think we do just a great job of caring for one another when a need arises and we become aware of it. I've seen people rally to that need.
Yes.
And yet we can still grow in that. Part of the soundtrack of Scarcity is making you think I don't know if I have enough to share.
Yes.
Because I need to hold back, blah, 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 whatever it is, right? Like that's the scarcity mindset. Whereas an abundance mindset is God has put this person in my life and this need has been revealed and he has always provided for us. And so we're going to step in and be a part of what he's doing and trust that he will return, what's been sacrificed.
Yes.
And so I think that's a beautiful part of this Acts 2 passage. And then I also just want to highlight that just that word devoted, like they were so committed to getting together. They were devoted to this. They were soaking up the teaching about the gospel. They didn't have like all of the Bible, bound and, and in their leather, Bible with the extra wide columns, to journal their thoughts. This was like, they were like gathering around to hear about Jesus Christ and how, he came to die for our sins and he was raised from the dead, and then how they were to live as a new community of ones who have been called out of this world and to represent something different. And they were soaking that up. They were devoted to it, and they were devoted to praying together. And I just love that because I think that part of the soundtrack of abundance is prayer. I think that's part of it. And you, when you're listening to the soundtrack of abundance and you realize that there is this inexhaustible, unsearchable amount of riches in glory and knowledge and wisdom and grace and mercy and provision available to you, you go and ask for it,
Yeah.
We were praying before this podcast started, and I had this picture of Scrooge McDuck. What was the name of that cartoon? Does anybody, Jesse, do you remember the name of the cartoon? It's like, Donald DuckTales. Yes, DuckTales. Woo. Yes, you harmonized. That was so great. People probably didn't hear that, but Scrooge McDuck has this like huge storehouse full of like gold coins, and he just likes to swim around in it, which I could totally use as an illustration for something else one day. But in this particular case, I was just imagining that that's the storehouse of all of God's goodness, and you cannot get to the bottom of it. It is unsearchable. It you just can never exhaust it.
Yes.
And so that's what we're trusting in when we go to him in prayer and we ask, Lord, would you give me the wisdom I need for this? Would you, provide the grace I need to deal with this?
Yeah.
That's abundance.
Yes. And I think underneath the scarcity mindset is a lie about who God is and his character, which reminds me of a few weeks ago when you were talking about in the garden, how like kind of the original suggestion to Eve from the what's the word I'm looking for? From the snake is that like God isn't who you think he is, or like he's holding out on you. It's just like a suggesting like, is he really good? Is he really going to provide? And so I think anytime we're starting to listen to the soundtrack of scarcity, underneath that is a lie or like a questioning or a doubt in, is God going to be enough? Like maybe his love will run out. Maybe his storehouse will run dry. Maybe he's good to everyone else but me. Maybe like he was good and faithful in the past, but that's got to run out sometime in the future, right? Like all of that doubt of his character. And so I think, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to make sure you didn't change the subject. because I think we also, yes, so we doubt and distrust God. We listen to that Scarcity soundtrack, but we also think that we haven't done enough to merit or deserve whatever it is we're asking for.
Yes.
And that's why that proclamation that we made, that last song during communion on Sunday, was that Christ is enough. He has done enough.
Yes.
And so he has made the way so we can come into the throne, go to the throne of grace and ask for what you need. Like go in Jesus's name. He's done enough for you. So don't think I can't go back to God with this request until I've done enough to deserve it. That is a lie.
Yeah.
And that is part of the empire of scarcity. That is we slip back into slavery when we do that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. When we feel far from God and we think, let me do a few things to earn back my right to sonship, and then God will come let me back in. And that's just like the opposite of the gospel. Like he draws near to us, even in our mess, in our failings, in our weaknesses, because he is enough. We don't have to like get ourselves back up to like the enough bar because Christ is enough.
And it makes me think of the prodigal son.
Yes.
I may reference this in weeks ahead, but you've got the son who wanted all of his inheritance so that he could go have it now, and then he squandered it, and he came to this realization that he has nothing and his father has everything, so he needs to go back. And while he was prepared to just be a servant, his father wouldn't allow it because he's his son.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful picture for us. But the other brother is also like listening to the soundtrack of Scarcity, and he's frustrated that dad was going to waste the fattened calf on this celebration for, this brother who had gone and squandered everything. This brother did not merit that party. And he was frustrated by that because I guess he thought there wasn't enough to be able to celebrate, and so we're wasting the celebration on the prodigal son, right? And what does the father say to him? Some version of everything I have is yours. What? Because he's like, why don't you throw a party for me and my friends? And the dad's like, everything I have is yours. Why didn't you just ask? I think is my interpretation of that right there in that moment. Like, ask me.
Yes. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I might be stealing your thunder for weeks to come, but like when we're in the scarcity mindset, we like put that on other people too. And so if I have to earn it, you better be earning it too. And I'm not good with you getting all these gifts and good things from God when it doesn't seem to me like you've earned it. Why aren't you working as hard as I am?
Yes.
And so that all of that mindset just breeds such contempt and judgmentalness and just a lack of compassion and love for other people. And
it's amazing how fast that like we switch back to that song. It's just because it's like the song that's just always playing, and you just have to like go. And so like in my truck, this is like new to me. Like this is like the newest car I've ever owned. Maybe it'll always be like that. Like I guess it probably is like that. It's always the newest car you've ever owned. But now I have a 2015. It's like I have all this technology. Like I was not used to that in my 04 that I had before this. And one of the things is the Bluetooth that just connects to the radio. Ooh. And but it just sort of, I don't know how to fix it, but it's got this like autoplay. So it just starts playing something when I get in the truck. I don't tell it to play, it just does it. I don't know. There's probably a way to fix that. Someone's gonna text me or email me or talk to me about this in the lobby on Sunday. But it just starts, and I just feel like that's what the soundtrack to the Empire of Scarcity does. It's just like it's just always kind of like on autoplay, and you have to go change it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about what are some of the things that help us switch the song. So because we know we will like in our flesh and in our default natural tendencies go into the scarcity song. What are some of the practices? What are some things that can help us switch the song?
Yeah. Well, you use the word practices, and I think that's so important. We have to practice. And so one that I sort of alluded to in the story of Exodus is the practice of Sabbath. and resting from work and trusting that God will still provide. It'll be there after you've rested. We talked a lot about this at the men's retreat last fall, and I referenced it on Sunday. We rest because we believe that he reigns. Mm-hmm. We rest because he reigns. And so practicing Sabbath is a way of switching that song back and saying, I can stop working. And that's good.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Throughout our Sabbath, there's just kind of like a mantra playing in my mind that like Jesus is enough. And so like when I'm tempted, we also try to like not have phones on Sabbath. And so anytime I feel this, just like, but I want to get on my phone, but I want to scroll, but I want to just like get that dopamine fix or whatever. Mm-hmm. I just like remind myself like Jesus is enough. Like I can be satisfied in him today. And like that flexing that muscle helps me throughout the rest of the week of like, I've trained my mind in part. It's not perfect, but like I'm practicing that muscle of like going to Jesus and trusting him to be enough and being satisfied in him instead of constantly going to other things. And then too with, this one's like silly, but I like feel like so much of my life is spent doing laundry. And so like every day except for Sabbath, I do laundry. And so, but on Sabbath, I do not do laundry. And so that whole day, I just watch it in the laundry room. I just watch it pile up and pile up and pile up. And there can be a part of me that starts to panic of like, that means there's going to be a lot of work for me later on this week. And then again, I just get this opportunity to be like, God is enough. Like even like for today, he's enough. And when I have more work to do, he'll be enough then too. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds silly, but that genuinely helps me like rest in the work that like is coming for me and the work because I'm not working then. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. Yeah. And I just want to say that I don't do this well. I don't do this very well at all. This is a hard practice for me. So I just want to say that, you know, like, cause I'm not like the pastor who has all this down, right? You know, like this is one that's really hard for me.
Yes.
But I know, I feel the invitation from the Lord to trust him in this. Yeah. And it takes work.
Yes.
To rest.
Yes.
It really does.
Yes.
That's why I think it's called a practice, right?
Yeah.
Or a discipline would be another word for it. Okay, what's another one?
Another one is serving. So I think a lot of times when we imagine like serving, whether that be on a team in like a formal capacity on a Sunday morning or just like serving informally our brothers or sisters, our family, our friends, like anytime we consider serving, the empire of scarcity is going to ask you what is that going to cost you? What are you going to get from that? Is it really going to be worth it? Is that really worth your time? Is that really worth the effort? Like, and you just start overemphasizing the cost, the perceived cost of serving.
Yes.
And then a lot of times, again, the scarcity mindset will have you believe that that will cost me too much. But the kingdom of abundance will tell you, like, you have enough. Jesus will be enough. He will supply everything you need. And kind of like what you said on Sunday, like give him your fishes and loaves and trust him to multiply it. And so like, that does feel like it will be a cost on my family, on my time, on my resources, on my energy, on my social capacity. Like, it will, but there's so much joy and fruit and abundance that will come from serving. And so just like making ourselves serve and do those hard things, I think kind of is one way that we just shut off that soundtrack of scarcity and live in the kingdom of abundance and trust him to supply what we need to do the things he's called us to do.
Yeah, I love that. How about this one? Silence. I think practicing silence is really important because in the silence, the Lord can speak, but we fill our time. And I got a great message from someone in our church family a week or two ago that was, I think it was in response to what we were talking about in Isaiah 55, when God invites us to come to him and then listen to him, that your soul may live. And this person was just saying like, I so value efficiency and I want my life and need my life to be efficient. And what can be behind that, efficiency can be good, but what can also be behind that is that there's not enough of whatever. There's not enough time. And so when I get this time to myself, I need to fill it with, whatever, to be real efficient and maximize that time. And this person sensed the Lord whispering, don't do any of those things. Just be with me and listen to me that your soul may live. And that's what this person did, and had this time where the Lord spoke into the silence, and they were able to enjoy his presence. And that is my heart for us. And I think in particular right now as a church, where the Lord has us is he is wanting to build up and kindle and blow and breathe into this fire in our souls for him. And we have to draw near to him to like catch that warmth and that fire, and all of this, even just this living with this abundance mindset, it flows out of a close personal relationship with God. And we have to pursue that. Just like we would pursue any kind of relationship. Yes.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. There's certainly practices, things that we can do that kind of like strengthen this muscle in us. But at the end of the day, what you just said is like, this is going to flow out of a relationship with him and out of drawing near to him. So I just encourage everybody, as you're listening to this podcast and it's about to go off, take a moment to just draw near to him and remind yourself of his character, of who he is, and just give yourself a moment to like let him be enough, and remind yourself that he is enough and that he's truly all you truly have. This is something I was kind of like wrestling with, is like, okay, but how is this true, or what does this look like in the face of real loss or real pain or real suffering? And it's just like fighting the truth down into my heart of like, even in the face of loss, of suffering, of pain, Jesus is still the bread of life. Like he is still enough, even if I have nothing else. And that gives me so much confidence for the future to face any pain, any loss, anything that could come my way, if I know like, but I have Christ and Christ is enough for me. Then anything that comes my way, me and him can handle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I just want to maybe add to that as we're closing that there's a prayer that we posted on Instagram. I think it's on Instagram this week, that just kind of helps us pray into this idea. And I would recommend you going and checking that out if you're on Instagram, and maybe we can make that available some other way if you're not, because I think it's a great prayer that kind of helps us. I think sometimes just giving us words to pray kind of helps us. I mean, the disciples said, teach us how to pray. And Jesus said, okay, here you go. And so this may be a helpful way to learn, how to pray this, give us this day our daily bread.
Yeah. So go check that out, and thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.
See ya.